We don't really have the option to dice with death nowadays because everything has been cut with anything. It's Russian roulette.
1,051 people lost their lives in 2022 as a result of drug-related poisonings.
Drug deaths in Scotland remain at the highest rates in Europe.
It's a medical illness, addiction. People are quick to call people names. Everybody's a human being.
Addiction just affects the individual. It rips families apart.
Addiction is not a crime. What they need is support and treatment and care.
This site will become home to a safe drug consumption room, offering a clean and controlled space to use illegal drugs.
The evidence is overwhelming that they are saving lives.
Is drug checking the next step in the search for a solution?
If we're inviting people into an overdose prevention centre or a supervised consumption facility, it's not really ethical not to have the opportunity to get the drugs tested as well.
Families say they're hopeful of real change.
It was in this room that Corey Pearson spent many years high and alone. He'd struggled with depression and anxiety since he was a child, but it wasn't until he was prescribed pain medication that his battle with drug addiction began.
I had a green stick fracture and then I went to the doctors and got some pain medication, and then boom, the reaction that every addict experiences when they have experience with their first drug happens. From then on, it grew and grew and more.
Corey, who's now 31, was only 19 at the time. He says the drugs gave him a sense of euphoria and distracted him from his demons.
The scared wee boy who had no social skills, no ability to do anything or anything, going out into the world, being independent, self-worth, that suddenly, I had all that on drugs. And people who are addicts will tend to find that because it gave me some measure of power.
When Corey's doctor discovered he was addicted to painkillers, they stopped prescribing them. He then turned to illicit drugs such as opioids and street Valium.
I remember going online and ordering things like tapentadol, which was like a medication from Thailand, like a see-through bag, brown tablets, that was the colour. And in my mind, I'm like, I don't know what's in these, and I don't have any way of checking what's in them. But then, if I go without, the darkness will return.
Crew 2000, a harm reduction charity's campaigning for drug checking facilities to be introduced in Scotland.
So drug checking is when people have the opportunity to meet face to face in a safe space and to submit a sample of a drug they might be thinking of taking, to get it analysed to find out what's actually in it, because it may well be different from what it's actually been sold as.
There are currently 22 pill testing organisations across Europe and the UK. They operate in different ways using different technology. For example, The Loop runs pop-up drug testing services at festivals and events across England. In the Czech Republic, Drugs Info site places anonymous amnesty boxes in clubs, workplaces and festivals. People can drop their drugs into them to be analysed. The Scottish Government says it's planning to submit applications to the Home Office for drug checking facilities in Glasgow, Aberdeen and Dundee in the coming months.
The Energy Control in Spain have noted that when they're at festivals providing drug checking in real time, there's definitely a reduction in risk. In the UK itself, in England, every single festival that Loop has been at, there has been much, much more positive health outcomes there. There have been fewer hospital admissions, and there haven't been any deaths at any festival where the Loop have been operating drug checking. And when we ask young people about whether they would use a drug checking facility, 75% of them say they definitely would.
Emma believes it would also be effective as an early warning system against emerging substances.
People are aware that there is contamination in the supply. Also, we're all aware, I think, of the situation in America with fentanyl. We haven't seen that in great numbers in Scotland, but people are aware that this is a possibility.
Is there concern that introducing drug checking facilities may in fact encourage people who otherwise wouldn't have taken drugs to dabble in it, to think, well, now I'm doing it in a more safe way?
I'd be very surprised if that was the case. I think drugs are still incredibly stigmatised, and people who take drugs are incredibly stigmatised, and still we have legislation that will punish people found in possession of drugs. I don't think there's any evidence that drug checking has increased drug taking, drug prevalence or drug harms. Quite the opposite, in fact.
What the drug checking facilities would look like and how they would operate would likely vary depending on the needs of each city.
If there's a drug facility, checking facility in Glasgow and I'm here, I'm not going all the way up there, I'm using now. So it's like having the resources and the location of these places dotted around the place. Pharmacies, doctors, support services, I don't know, wherever having it couldn't hurt.
Throughout his addiction, Corey couldn't hold down a job. His relationships fell apart and he became what he describes as an unlovely creature.
The consequences of my using got such that, you know, I nearly died on a number of occasions. And when you're done, you're done. Like the pain and suffering that comes with all that using, you're backed into a corner where you have no other choice but to, you know, your options is jails, institutions or death, and people helped build me back up from the ground up. Addiction stripped me of my entire humanity.
Corey's now receiving medical treatment for his addiction and has been clean for more than 6 months.
I feel that there's hope now. I feel that they have a chance at life. I would have done anything to feed this monster, and then equally so I have to feed that into my recovery.
Hiya! Another one, hiya!
Peer support has played a crucial part in his recovery.
Just get it in there!
Creative Change Collective uses theatre and performance therapy to help people like Corey work through their issues with addiction.
Recovery isn't to be endured, it's to be enjoyed. You know, it's about the reintegration of like a life that you find you love and you enjoy, and this helps you to have an aspect of that.
How much benefit do people get from this drama therapy? What change do you see in them once they start coming here?
Well, initially when they come in, they're overly anxious, they're very sceptical, and they're like, what is this? What are we doing? The more every week they come, you can see maybe the first week they will sit in themselves, they're not speaking, they don't want to take part. By week 2, they're vocalising, they're maybe just saying a couple of words in a session. Sometimes you see a full circle of, by the end they're like, I love this, and they're up and they're really 100% committed to doing it.
I'm from the East End of Glasgow, so I wasn't really into anything like this, no. So I came down, had a look, and at first I thought it wasn't for me, you know, the way they were acting, and I said, no, it's not for me. But one of the boys says to me, listen mate, I felt like that too, get a wee shot, stay the rest of the day, come back next week, and I really do love it, no, it's been fantastic.
Andy, who was dependent on alcohol for 12 years, now speaks in schools about addiction and works with recovery groups across Glasgow.
It's all right somebody coming with a textbook or something to say, listen, I know what you're suffering from, this and that, but I've not lived it. No, it needs somebody that's lived it to say, I know what you're feeling, I know what you're thinking.
Andy's not only trained to support people through their recovery, but also how to practically help someone who's overdosed. He's trained to use naloxone, a medication which temporarily reverses the effect of an overdose. Just before our interview started, someone collapsed here, right outside the Creative Change Collective building. Andy was able to administer an injection and the man regained consciousness. Now, we decided not to film that for privacy reasons, but it was proof that Scotland's drug crisis is happening right here on our doorsteps.
Well, it's very important we offer support and help to people. No, we're all human beings, no. Nobody will get emotional, sorry. Nobody starts out in life to end up like that, no. And the boy was obviously lying in kind of opiate state, and so the naloxone's brought him round about, and they're now waiting in the ambulance, so yeah, it was very good. And it's the first time I've ever done it.
I'm not saying that you should condone the actions of people that affect you, but an empathic, compassionate attitude change towards addicts would massively help the resource allocation and the help of certain services.
While the work to tackle drug deaths continues, the success of supervised consumption rooms and possible drug checking facilities remains to be seen. But so many meaningful changes are already happening on the ground in communities like this.
Sing it, don't worry. What are you going to say? About a thing. Don't worry about a thing, no. 'Cause every little thing, it's gonna be alright. It's gonna be alright. Sing it. Don't worry.
think at the end of the day, it's like, I mean, it's like, how free do you really want to be? You have to take the first step somewhere. You know what I mean? You have to give yourself the permission to fight for your own life again, and it's worth it. Is it easy? Absolutely not. Is it painful and messy? Yes, at times, but it's possible.